Hello and welcome back. So it's chapter 11, the final chapter of our textbook, Summary Thoughts on Organizational Change. So we're going to try to pull things together here for a few minutes. We're going to look at this, summarize how change and change agent affects organizations, who should be doing this kind of thing, and how you might orient yourself to organizational change. We'll look at some of the changes that are happening in organizations quickly so you kind of give you a little heads up on what's coming at you in terms of organizational change. Right. We've talked in chapters 2 and 3 about initial organizational analysis, seeing what how to change, what to change, getting an idea of what's going on, this awakening of how to get people the idea of where we are, this idea of a gap between the current and the situation and the desired state. So again, it's very important to get people to understand why the change is necessary. This mobilization, getting people moving towards this change through formal systems, so chapter 6 through the political and the cultural side of things, and then actually becoming a change agent, which we talked about in a fair amount of depth and the risk associated with that. Chapter 9 about implementing changes and action planning tools, things you can do to get things moving, things like reassigning responsibility and action items and those type things. And then chapter 10, more on exactly how to track these things and the effects that one thing I never realized, the effect that metrics have in an organization. When I first started out, I didn't realize that how important it is how you measure people, what goals you set for them, what monthly, weekly, quarterly measurements you have for people. They really do. People really do understand that affects how they're valued by the organization. It's very important for them to meet those goals. So if that's the case, you need to be very, very careful how you set those goals. And when you want them to do something differently, you probably have to change those goals. And it takes a lot of power, a lot of authority to change those goals in an organization or the overall strategy of the organization. So you're going to need help. You're going to need some major stakeholders to understand that you have to step in and change those goals. And you're going to get a lot of pushback because people are comfortable with those goals because they're in place, and that's just how we do it here. So again, we're going to flow from section to section there. So things to think about as you go through your project, right? Freeze and unfreeze. How are you going to unfreeze the organization? How are you going to change it? What are you going to change? You have to understand all these different levels of complexity. This awakening, you got to understand the need for change, the burning platform. Remember Cotter, over and over again, I told you that people have to understand, you develop a sense of urgency for this change. You have to get people convinced that this change is necessary, or you're going to have lackluster results at best. Right, you got to look at the formal systems and structure in place and how you're going to modify them to get these new results. And not just the structures in place, but the politics and the culture, the internal beliefs of the organization. So you can reshape that also in terms of how you're going to make things organized in terms of how people see themselves, how they see the organization, all these perception things, not just org charts and metrics. Right? It's essential you get to those levels of people's feelings at work. We talked a little bit about the psychological contract, that some people feel betrayed when that changes, and how people react to change. Again, more psychology than business involved here, because that's who you're dealing with. You're dealing with people, and you have to understand that. If you think you'd rather not be dealing with people and their psychologies, then you're probably not the right person for the change agent. Some of the things change agents need to do, and the characteristics you need to promote, or to the experiences you need to develop in yourself. Right, see chapter 8 for that list. That was a pretty good list of things you should be doing, and it's very, very similar to things that leaders do, because that's exactly what change agents do. In class, when I teach about leadership, my definition of leadership is people who exert influence on others. And the key word there is influence, right? And that's exactly what change agents do. They're exerting influence on others in an organization to make organizational changes. So that is the classic definition of leadership. Chapter 9, we talked about action planning and implementation. So how do you actually plan things and make it happen? And remember, that's a good chapter for, it's not just important to change agents, but for all people in organizations trying to get stuff done. Right, and a sort of a checklist you can run down here for designing effective control systems and tracking measures and all of that. Kind of a list I like here is the impact of organizational trends on change and changes. So this is the stuff that's happening a lot around the globe, and it's the kind of changes that force change on an organization. Certainly globalization is a big one. As organizations try to grow, out of their own country, as organizations are impacted by people trying to grow into their home turf, into their markets. Or it's not just the organization itself, but your whole chain of vendors, your whole chain of customers, how all that works. That's changing very quickly. And it's changing. Part of it that changes is this virtual networked organization. So again, not just your own company or your own organization, but your chain of vendors, your chain of customers, your dealers, your customer support, even if it's not your own company, all those people matter. Right? And do we have loose or tight controls? We probably have both, right? Making it more confusing. The world's becoming much more 24/7 as things are going on there, and how we're going to deal with that with our new organization. Cost and quality focus, how we're going to handle our supply chain, outsourcing different things, maybe IT, maybe customer service, things like that. And what are our choices for all of those activities? We might even be able to crowdsource things like capital, innovation, and things like get outside ideas to affect how we're doing things. Big data, we can again now have ways to look at things we never did before. We can sort through data and we can get access to information we never had before. And maybe that changes what we do. We just didn't know before, so maybe so. We certainly see product life cycles, a lot of product life cycles changing and getting faster and faster. So faster and faster changeover of products. Believe me, when I worked in the cell phone industry, that was the absolute trend there. Increased in customer expectation, right? People want more and more, and they're more than happy to pay less and less for it. There's more online communities that we have to deal with. Social media also factoring into this. People's perceptions. Remember in the balanced scorecard, we talked about people's perceptions of finance, people's perceptions of our customer service, and our customers' perceptions of us. So perception is a big deal, and if social media affects that, then we have to get in there and dig into that and deal with that and maybe try to help it. We certainly have rapid technology change. Smartphones have changed a lot of things. People have unbelievable information and data at their fingertips now. We're certainly changing in demographic issues. Certain countries are going up in wealth. We have political changes all the time. We have aging populations in Europe, US, Japan, places like that. How's that going to factor into everything? We have other countries with very, very young populations. Right? And certainly political changes that keep realigning things out there. So never a dull moment. And that's why managers spend a lot of time paying attention to the news, current events, that type of thing. They need a way to get information quickly so they can watch what's going outside of their organization. You notice almost all of this is outside the organization. So you as a leader in your organization have to pay attention to outside factors endlessly. Right? You not just have to know your own job, and know your own organization, but pay very good attention to what's going outside of your organization through lots of different areas. Other things that impact organizational trends, more global perspectives, both large and small firms. The small firms now can compete internationally when 25, 30 years ago that was virtually impossible. Now with the internet and global outsourcing and all that, they can compete just like the big boys. We talked about the big data a little bit. The web certainly enabled all this communication, both face-to-face, not face-to-face, but you can actually put faces on things now, so it's much easier than fax. There's much more negotiation at different levels, and that's certainly a useful skill to have. My advice for that is be sure, if you want somebody to agree with something, you got to give them something they want to agree to it, right? So be sure you learn how to negotiate for a win-win solution. And again, more and more empowerment to teams and process focus and so forth. Right? So we think about looking for patterns. We think about the vision framer. We think of people like organizational analysts who figure out what's going on and why it's going on. And again, on top of all this, we monitor and control our organization with lots of different goals and metrics, and how do those fit into the overall plan? Do they even agree? So we looked at all these things that business change specialist has to do. There's certainly mergers and acquisitions going on. There's joint ventures, all kinds of opportunities for organizations to change, to grow, to get better. And this is why, even though organizational change is risky and fraught with peril and has lots of failures, because of these reasons, these 12 reasons on this page, and it says the last at the end, and the list goes on, there's so many opportunities out there that organizations do it over and over again, because that's how you become successful. So even though it's certainly it's dicey at best, there's so much opportunity if we can pull off even part of this change, and makes the organization stronger and better. So we can certainly we can try to gain a perspective on all these changes that are going on. We have to recognize other people's perceptions, not just your own perceptions. We have to understand that their perception is their view of reality, your perception is your view of reality. We got to get people on board the team. We got to get people with a powerful change vision, and then we got to get people on our team to help us actively pursue this thing. So it is a challenge. So we're going to have a plan to work towards this change vision and do things that are positive. Again, we're not going to tear down the past, but we're going to build upon that for the future. We're not going to hang people for things they did in the past. We're just going to that was then, this is now. We're just going to move forward in a positive fashion, and then we're going to start with the low-hanging fruit and get some early wins and some quick wins to get people to jump on board, because the innovators are probably already with us, but we need the early adapters to jump on board so we get to that tipping point so we have people jump on board. Right. So in a quick summary, right, there's a lot going on with change. There's certainly a lot of literature in the industry about that now, and you're just going to have to deploy this. My suggestion is to start small if you can. Think about a plan. Think about those you're going to have to change, right? And remember, the number one fault is we don't convince people of the reason for change before we start getting them to change. So be very aware of that and spend the time and the effort it takes to make the change. Just because you convinced your boss there's need for change, or your boss convinced you, doesn't mean the rank and file have that idea. So be careful with those things, and hopefully you can make your life better, those around you better, your organization do better, and everybody can get to a better place where they can get the things they want out of their organization. So thank you for your attention, and I redirect you back to the Moodle page for our following activities.